Hello, Internet. My name is Kyle Snow of Pajodcast fame. You may know me from such other amazing podcasts as Sequels and Spin-Offs, the Pajodcast, and Controllers and Keyboards. And today we bring you the first episode of another one, and it's called Champions and Challengers, and it's about motherfucking sports.
Future champions right here. I'm wearing the jersey, ladies and gentlemen, if you can't see.
Yeah, we'll see about that. That's if you can beat the team of 20-year-olds.
Washington Capitals here, ladies. Hey.
They can't see you, but with me, as you've already heard, I've got Ryan Power.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Pajower.
Don't call yourself that. That nickname's never going to happen.
I can get into the story about how you wanted to name all the cast Pajaw something.
I mean, that was Pajaw. No. Those were those were like working titles, and they worked fine. And also with us is the ever-present and this time not half asleep, Chris Miller.
Yeah, it's nice to actually be awake for one of these.
But isn't it later?
Like
in the day? Because we finished at this time yesterday.
I guess, but I hadn't slept in like 48 hours, so
that's a fair statement.
It didn't feel later. But yes, hi everyone. Hi, Internet.
What up?
I'm a little more lively.
I'm still pretty lively.
Yeah. So
talking
sports. So for those of you who don't know, as of time of recording, the NHL Playoffs started today. So the first game of half of the series has happened. The other half of the series have not happened. And we've got some opinions. So we'll be doing a covering of the playoff brackets in general, today's results, predictions for the future, things of that nature. And then depending on how we do for time, we may get into other topics in mind. But with that, I think that we'll kick it off with, we'll go through these systematically. So we'll start with a series that has not started yet. The Chicago Blackhawks versus the Nashville Predators.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah. Chris, I'm going to kick it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Give me some opinions about this.
It's an interesting series. I mean, in one way, it's hard to bet against the Blackhawks, and they were the better team in the regular season. But I think a lot of us had Nashville pegged pretty high up going into the season, adding Subban, and in general, their growth that they had started to experience. But they really didn't have the best year. A guy like Johansson really never broke out. James Neal had, I believe, only like 40. He was like 41 points or something like that.
That's despite some good performances too on their roster, right? Like Subban might not have been as killer as he was in Montreal. I think he had some injury, like a few minor bugs this year as well. But I mean, you look at Captain Mike Fisher; he's been a stud for them this season, and he kind of had a really good season. And he's only a third liner, I believe. So
yeah, I mean, I think he plays second line for them. But yeah, I think they have Yarncrook on the third line.
Yeah.
But
I mean, Phil Forsberg still doing his thing over there.
Yeah, he kind of slowed down towards the end of the year, though. He only actually finished with 31 goals.
That's still, I mean...
There was a point where people were saying 40 was a pretty good chance.
30 goals, though, in the NHL. I mean, that's a top-line material. It's not struggling at that point.
Yeah, you're definitely not costing your team.
No. He was good this year. He led them in... he did tie for their leading goals with Victor Arvidsson, who was actually one of their biggest nice surprises. He led their team in scoring. He tied Johansson with 61 points. But when you only have a guy, when your lead team leader in scoring is 61 points, you're not really scoring a lot. I haven't even checked into where they stood in the league in goals, but I can't imagine they're one of the higher playoff teams.
That should have been one of their strengths, especially under Coach Laviolette. He kind of plays a little more of an offensive game. They added more offensive-minded players, and it feels like instead they got treated to kind of worse performances from their goalies, which I think they weren't expecting. Like everyone thought Rene would still be a little higher than the form he's shown this season. And then you combine that with okay offense, but inconsistent. And, if you have a team filled with players like Ryan Johansson, PK Subban, Phil Forsberg, you should have a dynamic offense. It should be a strength, especially with that coach. So
they
it's interesting to see the struggles offensively.
They did end up rallying, and they do have a solid D, and I think that's one of the big things, and it's a D that can be quite offensive. At the same time, you got Yossi, Subban, Ellis. Ekholm's not really offensive, but he's a really good steadying D presence. But at the end of the day, if we're looking at the series, the Blackhawks are a team I have a hard time betting against. I've betted against them before. Didn't go well for me. At the end of the day, the experience, they have the offense with Taves, Kane, Panarin, Hossa, Anisimov. I don't even know if Anisimov's healthy, but it doesn't even seem like it matters with them. Who's healthy? They always seem to just get the job done. You got the great defense with Keith and Seabrook and Hjalmarsson. And
Hjalmarsson, who's left the team and come back to the team.
Yeah, and then obviously
times that a lot of players that did that with Versteeg was one of them. They like send him to other players for a season, and then when they make a cup run, suddenly it's like, oh, they got that player again at the deadline. Okay, Chicago's a weird history. Yeah, so I don't.
You definitely also can't underestimate the fact that the organization tends to turn it on in the playoffs in general, but playoff experience is something that you can't underestimate, right? There's a lot of teams in the past and throughout the NHL that have done well in one-off game situations where you're not necessarily getting prepped for by a particular opponent. But when you've got 4 to 7 games up against a team, you're prepping strategies specifically for that team. And a lot of the infrastructure of the team, but also the players have experience going deep in the playoffs. Some of them being cup winners, obviously.
I don't think Hjalmarsson ever left that team.
Okay, maybe
I think you're thinking about Duya.
Okay, yeah, and Daly too, because I think he left and came back too.
Daly. I know Daly was in Pittsburgh at one point.
I thought he went from Chicago to Pittsburgh to Chicago. Well, I think he went from Dallas first, right?
Yeah, he was originally a Dallas draft pick.
Yeah.
Either way, though, with the Blackhawks, the one of the guys that's really stood out for them this year is Panic, a guy that he used to play in my hometown.
Of Belleville, for those who don't know.
Yeah, 22 goals, 44 points. And really, he helped the depth of that offense because we all know about the guys at the top. And, yeah, they're great. I mean, I think Tate's a bit overrated offensively.
He had a year this year where everyone realized, he wasn't as good defensively this year either.
He wasn't as great defensively this year. He still had around 60 points, which
I mean that's
I guess about the norm for him at this point.
I don't know. I don't want to tout the horn of Nicholas Backstrom too much, but there's an underrated Selke man right there, in my opinion.
Well, sure. I mean,
way better than Taves.
I certainly offensively he's better than Taves.
No,
that's
defensively.
Question. I don't know if he's better.
No, don't know. Watch all the Capitals games of the year. He's the most consistent player.
I don't have time to watch all the
There's a reason all the analysts, even the TSN ones, say most underrated player in the NHL.
Underrated doesn't make him better than the guy most people peg as the top 2 defensive player in the league.
Boys, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I want to say who's going to win it and how many games.
Blackhawks 6.
Nashville 5.
Ooh, controversial. We have a split desk here.
I am of the opinion that we are going to see a lot of high-scoring games. I'm calling it right now. The first game of this series is going to be like 6-5.
Bit of a clown fiesta?
I think that Nashville's offense has been waiting to explode, and now that they have a healthy Subban coming into the playoffs, they've started, as Chris said, to regroup here. I think that Chicago's going to be tired, overwhelmed. They've done this too many times. Taves isn't as good defensively as he was in previous years. I feel like people on that team are kind of injury bugged enough or bruised and sore enough that they're just like, we've already won like 3 cups. What's the big deal? And I think Nashville's so hungry that they're just going to come out lit.
I'll say this.
It's going to be a wild series from there.
I'll say this. Playoff experience matters, and they have enough new guys in Panarin, Panic, Hartman, Schmaltz, Kruger, Hero, a whole bunch of guys who have all been making a big impact who haven't had that cup. And I don't think they're going to be – I don't think Kane and Taves and Keith and Seabrook are just going to stop playing.
Yeah, that's why I said 6-5.
And Crawford's lights out.
6-5. So. I think it's a case where I think it's going to be a case where it's not going to be a typical playoff series. I don't think it's a high defensive series. I think it's going to be a lot more high offensive.
Could be.
Renee's not playing up to par, and you look at that. You look at what I believe anyways, Nashville's strength. I think Nashville could play a little more high run and gun game than Chicago. Like Chicago's kind of strength has always been their adaptability anyway. Like you've seen them in their cup runs, they'll play series and win defensively, and then if they run into a high offensive team, they can adapt and win 4-3, 5-4, right? Like they're the type of team that finds ways to win in any situation. But I just think something's off right now with the Blackhawks. I just don't see it this year.
Fair enough. We're going to move on to Minnesota Wild versus the St. Louis Blues. Ryan, we'll kick it off with you this time.
Well, the first game of the series just happened. And
Yes.
St. Louis,
We should mention that. St. Louis is up 1-0.
Yeah, they won in overtime on I didn't know who got the goal. I didn't actually watch this
Joel
game.
Edmondson.
Okay.
Got it.
Edmondson winner. In OT, Sabatka had a point. Parise had a point. This is gonna be a close series. I don't know. This is gonna be tough. If you want, did you ask for a prediction first, Kyle, or just opinion?
We'll do. You guys can discuss a little bit, and then we'll get predictions.
I think that on paper, Minnesota's the better team. Minnesota's a fantastic team on paper, but Minnesota's had issues playing as their level a lot since they've acquired so many players in free agency. You know, they acquired Parise, they acquired Suter that 1 year. And then I feel like they've just been adding free agency names. Historically, too, people that are affiliated with the state, which is, that's a good thing, I guess. It's just a weird thing. You don't normally see that. It'd be like if Toronto, just like, oh, we're only playing with major stars that are from Ontario. It's like that's a weird thing to do. But I think Minnesota in 7, honestly. Like, I think it's going to be a close series. I think they're going to have a lot of 3-2, 2-1 games like we saw. A lot of overtimes. I think it's going to be the same thing that happened too with the St. Louis Blues in previous playoffs, where they play such a hard-fought first round and second round series that going deep just becomes harder and harder. That's one of the reasons why, the Blues have been out to like the Blackhawks a lot, is because they just, when you have to play a lot of long overtime games and hard series, it
does wear you down.
Yeah.
Mm.
Chris, where do you stand on this? Ryan, you said Minnesota in 7.
I think Minnesota in 7.
Yeah, I'll start with Minnesota. Minnesota's kind of an interesting team. They really relied on team offense and goaltending this year, and their scoring by committee, worked pretty good. I mean, they had I looked at this earlier, like 9 guys with at least 40 points, and at the same time, though, like Zach Parise only had 42 points.
Yeah, that's a 60-point, 70-point guy before even 80 in his career.
Yeah, he had a rough year. Even Pominville, who I know he's older, but he's been a big-time goal scorer in his career. He only had 13 goals this year in 78 games.
How much do you think Parise was his line mates previously? When he was putting up better numbers, he was playing a lot of times with Kovalchuk even, and now, like, I feel like ever since he made
Parise had numbers in Minnesota too. Like it's not like this is a regular thing anymore. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you that I don't think he's quite in his prime. Yeah. But he's had a 62-point season. He had 53 last year, but he did it in 70 games.
How about the play though? Just to briefly interrupt you, Eric Stahl, like 65 points.
And I was getting there. Yeah,
what a bounce back year for that guy.
Yeah, that he. A lot of us thought he was done, including me.
Oh, he's sure not done yet. He's still got another run in him, a few more seasons.
Yeah, and like the play in Nino Niederreiter too. 25 goals, 57 points.
Guys bounced around from teams until he settled in Minnesota, and they do that with a lot of like lost projects. They seem to grab them, and I think they got a good a good department of coaches and stuff in there.
This is another team with a really good defense too, and it could be a defense that suffers from the Vegas expansion draft because Brodin is the guy that probably won't get protected. And he's a very, very good young left-handed defenseman. There are not a lot of them out there. But you got Suter, Spurgeon, Dumba, and Brodin. Good goalie. Here's my thing with them this playoffs. Dubnyk has sucked in the playoffs. In his last 2 years in the playoffs, he was terrible. He was not the Devin Dubnyk that has made runs at the Vezina in the regular season. Just looking at the numbers here, 6-10, okay, whatever its record, 284 goals against average, 896 save percentage. So that's not going to win you any series.
Who's coaching Minnesota now? Is it Boudreau?
Isn't it Mike Yeo? Oh no, you're right. It is Boudreau, I think.
Yeah, right. Because Boudreau was in Anaheim, but then.
I know. Yeah, Yeo's he's St. Louis's coach. That's where I got thrown out there. And he used to be the head coach in Minnesota.
Maybe it's just me. Boudreau's teams used to do this historically all the time. You're talking about the goaltending woes. Look at the shots on goal for this game. I'm just looking at this now. 52-26 for Minnesota. They lose 2-1. Holy crap.
So Jake Allen played well.
Yeah. Isn't that
Two.
atypical of Boudreau's experience in the playoffs too? He has teams that just shoot the puck a lot, and
I honestly didn't watch the game, so I don't really want to comment too much on
I
it.
don't know.
But,
Yeah, that's true. I didn't watch it either. I'm just looking. I literally.
it's
Put
hard
you
to
on
say
the
what
spot, Chris. Who do you think wins the series?
let me quickly just give me like a minute to talk St. Louis for a minute because
Oh, sure. Sorry. Yeah, I did kind of.
yeah. So with St. Louis, we all know who the guy is to stop. Tarasenko is a monster. 39 goals this year. Again, a team with a very similar team, actually. They're pretty similarly built teams. I just think Minnesota's the better goalie. But St. Louis has the guys like Schwartz and Steen. Perron had a good year. Fabry, Laterra didn't really have great years, but they're good players at the end of the day. And again, they have a great D. You got Pietrangelo, Parayko. Bouwmeester can still play. He's not an offensive guy, but and I actually think sometimes I personally think Carl Gunnarsson gets a bit overlooked at times. I don't think
he's a way better player than he gets credit for. I'll agree with you
Although I don't really know how well he played this year. He was pretty low on time on ice, so that makes me kind of wonder. With that being said, Jake Allen's a solid goalie. I don't think he's in the league of Devin Dubnyk. In the playoffs, he's also had some bad performances. I believe he has a 902 save percentage, but with that being said, that's a small sample, and it is for Dubnyk as well. Henrik Lundqvist used to be terrible in the playoffs, and he's racked up about 4 really good years in a row. With that being said,
good start
looking
really
at this,
goalies, to be completely honest with you, it's a 2-1
yeah.
game. Really
I think at the end of the day, trading Kevin Shattenkirk is going to kill St. Louis.
Yeah, I was just going to say my issue with St. Louis is their depth on the forward department. I just don't see it. Like they lost many key players over the years. You look at David Backes as a big loss.
They banked on guys like Yakupov and Pajard being better than they are advertised to be. And I think what made them work was having the offense from the back end making up for it.
But
I don't think they have that as much. Maybe I don't think they have.
The gambles taken by Minnesota, it in some ways mirrors the gambles taken by St. Louis, banking on guys like Nina Ryder, and sometimes those players work out, sometimes they don't. Even Chris Stewart, that's a player that off and on, inconsistent enough where you have to question how good they are as former Blue too.
To put you on the spot though, Chris, who's going to win the series? How many games?
Minnesota, 7 games.
Okay, equal. I'm going to be bold and say Minnesota in 4. Wow. A statistical impossibility because they're already
they've already lost one.
Yes,
they're actually going to rectify that and say how to win games now is actually just shots on goal. So Minnesota technically won that game 52-24.
Man, that's remarkable. Yeah, all the scoring records are going to go out the window.
Hey, Ovechkin always shoots the most shots. I like this strategy.
It's brilliant. All right, so we're going to move on to the Anaheim Ducks versus the Calgary Flames.
Flames, you say?
Oh,
Flames.
It's a tough series to judge.
Yeah. All right, Ryan.
I'm going to make you judge it. On the one hand, I would normally say Calgary. To be completely honest with you, in this series, I would normally say Calgary. The Calgary Flames, I think, are a hungrier team than the Ducks, and the Ducks have so much playoff inconsistency in the last several years. And there's just this young fire that's going on right now in the league, and I think there's a few teams that are a part of that wave. But then I start thinking about the reality that Anaheim's a bigger physical team, and the truth of the matter is Calgary has always struggled in the playoffs, specifically against Anaheim. I mean, I don't have to tell anyone about that series where Anaheim won the cup from them in was that 2004, I believe, Chris? Where they played each other.
They won the cup in 2007.
Was that the year that it was Anaheim Calgary in the finals, or was it Anaheim, or was it Calgary Tampa? I'm thinking
neither team has played in the finals against here because they're both in the West.
You're thinking of Calgary Tampa.
I'm thinking of Calgary Tampa. Yeah. Anyway,
it's not in this series.
Yeah, I still say that I'm not a Flames fan. I live in the area, but Anaheim, I'd guess, maybe in 6.
Anaheim in 6, but you don't sound confident in it, Chris.
I think the Ducks are getting a little underrated here. They really finished well the year. They almost they won the division, and Edmonton almost caught them. But Anaheim's defense and goaltending was terrific this year. They were the 3rd least amount of goals per game against. which is pretty impressive. And I don't think the Flames have a great goaltender yet. I know Elliott, and then they've had, I think, Johnson playing as well. To be honest with you, I don't watch a lot of Calgary games, so my knowledge of them is not great. But Elliott, I'm pretty sure, is considered the starter there. But I've always kind of thought of Elliott as just that decent goalie that can come in and be okay. But at the end of the day, he's not going to win you a series. And I don't know if Calgary has the offense or even the defense to beat Anaheim. I mean, Gibson took some huge steps forward this year in net. I mean, goodness gracious, he was one of the best goalies in the league this year when he played. And Getzlaf had a nice rebounding year. And then they got some tough players too. You got Kessler and Perry were never easy to play against. Raquel had a great year. Cam Fowler, I don't know if he's healthy. I know he took that hit. So I can't remember there. But then you have some of the third line type guys like Cogliano, who's ridiculously fast. You got Nick Rich, he's a tough guy to play against. So I think the Flames have their hands full here. But looking at the Flames, I mean, I think their chances rest really in Brian Elliott. I think they need their goaltending to be better than Anaheim's for them to have any chance.
That's exactly my thinking. Yeah, Anaheim does have younger goalies, sorry, but realistically, those goalies have performed better. Like, there's a reason Anaheim's been trading goalies out and upgrading.
If you look at Elliott and Gibson this year, Gibson had a .924 save percentage and a .222 goals against average, which is pretty good. And Elliott had a .910 save percentage and a .255 goals against average. So he and Johnson both played a lot of games. Elliott played 49. Johnson played in 36 of them. And neither of them were great. They did the job. But at the end of the day, you need something better than that in the playoffs to beat a team that was the number one seed in their division. And I just don't think Calgary's going to be able to stop Anaheim. I don't see it being a lot of blowouts, but I do think Anaheim's going to win the majority of them for sure.
I mean,
if you want a prediction,
not a lot of blowouts usually.
Anaheim in 5.
Anaheim 5 out of Chris. Anaheim in 6 out of Ryan.
Correct.
So we have an agreement there. I'm not going to give a troll answer because they haven't played a game yet, so it wouldn't be funny. Also, using the same joke twice, not so great.
Used it again at some point.
No, I have another one lined up. That's a little bit longer down. Not that I'm like, it's just for timing purposes. I don't normally think of jokes hours in advance, but.
Oh wow, he's thought of it up hours, people. You better.
No, not hours. Partway through the cast, but it doesn't make any sense to go to. But it's going to end up being our second last series of discussion and jumping way ahead. Moving on though to the Edmonton Oilers and the San Jose Sharks. San Jose currently leads 1-0 after. Yeah. Did you say it was an overtime?
Yeah, I watched most of this game. I kind of had it on while I was watching Survivor. I was looking at it. I'm not, I only usually studiously watch. I'll watch some other games, but usually Caps games. But
overtime, it sounds like San Jose really outlasted, and outplayed Edmonton though.
Indeed. That series is interesting. I think everyone who's a hockey fan probably was at some point watching the beginning of that game at least, because there was this, hey, let's see what McDavid is like in the playoffs for the first time factor.
Would have loved to have had the opportunity, but I was stuck at work, and while we did have the Habs Rangers game on, I didn't get to watch much because here's this crazy thing about work. They expect me to work at it, so I was able to catch brief glimpses. And one of my coworkers was watching and gave me his opinions, but he wasn't exactly an analyst.
I didn't really give Edmonton a chance to win this series in earnest. The only thing that's the question mark is the McDavid factor, because let's be realistic. Yes, Cam Talbot is really good, and he's definitely growing to be a starter. And yes, their defensive core starting to learn. They're still so young. And I mean, there's a reason everyone's giving McDavid the clear cut, you're the MVP, because he is the team. That team's not in the playoffs without Connor McDavid. Like, let's not make any misgivings here. That's what the case is with the Oilers. And they have a lack of playoff experience for a lot of cases. Milan Lucic doesn't, but early on in the game, there was certainly a physical factor. that was on the Shark side. You know, you saw forechecks and dump-ins, and there was the first goal that the Oilers scored was a little weak, I think, on San Jose. It was a 5-hole from Clefbaum that I thought was the goalie could have had that. 5 holes usually, I hate 5-hole goals. Those are always goals you think if the goalie was kept his pad shut like that goal doesn't go in, right? But
yes.
San Jose scored the goal like 4 minutes into overtime. The Oilers looked okay though. There was some excitement, and it was fun to see even the crowd. Like obviously, it's easy to forget that a lot of these cities in Canada, they care about hockey a lot. There's a lot of rabid fans, and that stuff's kind of fun. But realistically, I don't give Edmonton much of a shot to take this series more than 5 or 6 games. Just because of the McDavid factor, I'm going to say that they take it 6. So San Jose in 6.
San Jose in 6.
There's just way too many. Like San Jose is littered with playoff performers. You got Pavelski, you got Ward. Thornton's been historically pretty okay in the playoffs as well, as has Couture. Like a big portion of their forward core has been fantastic in the playoffs, and I haven't even got to Brent Burns yet, guys. Like they're just pretty fantastic and heavier, better all around. I just think that this will be a good learning experience for the Edmonton crew. I think that's what this will be treated like.
Yeah, I think that every game that they get past the first 4 is kind of a win for the team because you want to get your guys some experience. And even going out in the first round, you'd want to see a long series, give them a little bit of time going deep into series at least.
An example of that is this game. Like teams with playoff experience don't lose the first game at home in overtime to the road team. Like those are must wins. If you've played good enough to take the team to overtime at home, obviously it's pretty pivotal in most series, but you have to defend home ice when you have it. Like pretty much that's a given in the playoffs, especially if your team starts with home ice advantage, right? Because then if you defend home ice every game, you've won the series no matter what. So yeah,
it's true. Chris, what's your take on this?
I'm actually I'll get there. With San Jose, I think the key for them is, first of all, Thornton coming back and being healthy. I don't think he played tonight.
No, I don't think so.
That's a big thing. They need him back for sure. Even looking beyond the series. But with that being said, Martin Jones needs to be better than he has been this year. I don't know if he needs to be better to beat Edmonton, because I also kind of agree. I think Edmonton's a bit overrated. It's kind of weird that they're the seed that had the top. They were the top seed of the 2, because I really don't think they're the better team at all. But with that being said, I think San Jose is going to LA Kings them and hit them out of the building and score clutch goals. And I think they can get decent enough goaltending to run them out, probably in about 6 games. I think Edmonton's obviously McDavid's special, but I think they can get to McDavid a bit if they just play positional hockey and finish their checks on him. And that's easier said than done, obviously, shutting him down. I don't think you can shut him down. I think you have to contain him. But I think, San Jose's got some decent defensemen that I think can do a good enough job on him. Like Vlasic.
I saw some of that tonight, even. There was a play that stood out in my mind where McDavid, he's a fast player, as everyone knows. He made a move through the zone into the offensive end, and there were 2 defensemen on him, and he was skating and trying to rush to the net, and both defensemen lifted his stick all the way up over his head. Like they're just gonna, like as everyone says, once the playoffs get started, the defense gets started for real, and even magical players can get shut down. I just wanted to bring it up since that was to your point.
Yeah, and since Draisaitl's now playing with McDavid, I don't think they have the second line, the secondary scoring to actually beat San Jose. I think at the end of the day, guys like Nugent Hopkins, even Eberle, looking through the lineup here, Pouliot, Letestu, Maroon, I don't think any of those guys are going to lift them above San Jose. San Jose, you got Thornton and Couture, although I don't remember if Couture is healthy, but you're right, Thornton, Pavelski, Burns. I mean, you keep going on with that team. They had, and then, like you said, guys like Joel Ward who have been constant
tonight, by the way.
Performers. Of course he did.
Ryan's favorite boy.
Just looking at these stats too, guys, it dominated. Like despite the fact that the Oilers got up 2-0 in this game, it was a dominating performance overall by the the Sharks.
Yeah.
They outshot them 44-19. The hits were in favor of the Oilers, but the Oilers blocked 23 shots, 23, and they had 23 giveaways, and they were dominated on faceoffs, 57%, 43%.
It's going to be a tough series.
It is. It's going to be battling through games like this. Your goalie's going to be to continue to be really good because
they had a good regular season, but as we know, playoffs are a whole different story. And not to mention, there's other things too. Like the Oilers are the worst faceoff team in the league.
That's not good.
They're not really a great penalty killing team either.
Yeah.
These are things that you need to have come playoff time, and they don't have them. And I think they're going to need a season or two to get better in those features. And for now, I think this is best chalked up as a learning experience. But I think the Sharks beat them in 6. And I think a couple of these games they're going to beat them pretty bad too.
You talk about, I agree. You talk about they're not a great penalty killing team, and I think that contrasts really harshly with the way the physical players on their team play. Like they have a lot of physical players on their team, or a couple names, I should say. I look at Lucic as one. Like I believe the Oilers take a decent number of penalties, like they did in this game. Obviously, they gave up 6 power plays, but like if you don't have a good penalty kill and you give up a lot of power plays, you're going to get scored on. Like the shot totals are just going to go up. And if you're not good at faceoffs either, like you're just territorially, like they might have a lot of good offensive players, but they need to have the puck for anything to happen. And that's it's a big reason why defensive teams do so well in the playoffs. And that's why the playoffs is more defensive, because run and gun, you just can't, you have to try to make the other team play that for that to work.
That is true. So both of you are in agreement that San Jose wins in 6. We're going to move to the other side of the bracket now, gentlemen, into a series that I know Chris in particular has a strong affinity for: the Montreal Canadiens versus the New York Rangers. Chris being an avid Habs fan, probably not particularly happy with the game tonight because New York did end up winning this one. Chris, this is your team. I'll let you kick off your predictions.
Yeah, well, I'll start with talking about tonight. The Habs will not win this series if Alex Galchenyuk plays on the 4th line like he did tonight. It's as simple as that. It's too important of a player for them offensively. They don't have enough guys that can make up for his offense up front.
What was the thought process in putting him on the 4th line?
It seems like a message being sent for his defensive play, but to me, not again. I like Julian, but you don't send a message for a whole game when your team hasn't scored. I think it was about 5 minutes left when he started putting him on the top line, and Galchenyuk instantly had a scoring chance. And it was just like, yeah, of course he did.
Who does he play with on the 4th line?
Steve Ott and Martinson.
And on the first line, he's centering Pacioretty and
Radulov for a lot of the time, or Gallagher.
Yeah.
The thing is, he doesn't have to play first line. He doesn't even have to play center for all I care. Like, put him up front with guys who can play. Like score, even the 3rd line, they have Shaw and Lehkonen, or Shaw and Byron. I don't care. Like, the thing is, give him something to work with, because if you're playing him on the 4th line, Steve Ott is not a good enough player to. And even then, by the way, the 4th line was one of our best lines tonight. So I don't get it. This is not a team that is an offensively powerful team. They rely on Carey Price. And at the end of the day, regarding tonight, I think Montreal probably deserved better fate at times. A lot of bounces just really like off the stick and easy scoring chances that they couldn't even get a handle on, things you shouldn't be screwing up. But with that being said, regarding the series, Montreal swept them in the season. So this is a big win for the Rangers, and it's a big win for Lundqvist because he played well. But I don't think he played as well as a shutout with 31 saves would indicate.
So a few things went his way tonight. That happens.
He made a couple nice saves, but all in all, I think this series really depends on can Montreal actually score. 15th in the league in goals, 4 in the season. At times, they'll put up 5 goals on a guy like Lundqvist, and then the next game they get shut out. And it's this inconsistency that they need to figure out. If nothing else, they need to not be taking penalties. Brendan Gallagher, I think, had 3 penalties tonight. I get it. He's a chippy, feisty player. But you cannot be in the box. Deneau took a stupid penalty with about 6 minutes left, down 2. Or down 1, sorry.
But the Canadians had total 20 penalty minutes. but they only were on the power. The Rangers only had 4 power plays.
Either way, though, it was time. It was timing with some of these.
Timely penalties, yeah.
Some of them were terrible.
Those are still, six PIMs by 1 player. Gallagher no less. None of them a fight. That's three minors. You don't want that.
So looking at the series as a whole, Chris, what do you think are the win conditions for both of these teams?
I think the Rangers need to play like tonight. They need to win those tight games, and they really need Lundqvist to stay on his head. Because I really don't think they're the better team. I think they're pretty closely matched. I think the Canadiens, if Price plays like he did tonight, which, I mean, the 1 goal, kind of weak, but kind of also I think his vision was kind of blocked on. It was kind of a tougher one to save. I think he would have liked to have it back, though, if you asked him, obviously.
Of course.
But I think Montreal needs the offense going. That's why I say Galchenyuk needs to play up. And I think he will next game. I don't see them sticking him on the 4th line again. In terms of the series, I came in thinking it was going to be 7. I still think it's going to be 7. I think Montreal wins game 2. I think they split in New York. And I think it goes 7 in Montreal's favor. I just, not even trying to be biased, but I just think, I think Galchenyuk moving up, and I like a lot of the grittiness they added, a lot of playoff experience, and that can go a long way. And this is a team that constantly overperforms in the playoffs, especially up front. And I think you'll see it again, especially towards the games that are really crucial at the end of the series. And I don't know, they always seem to just get that big goal, and I think they will get it on New York. So I say Habs in 7 in OT.
That and New York's biggest strength being their stand in his head goaltender is not a strength that the Habs are missing. They have one of their own who arguably better. Although I think
New York offensively is a little faster than Montreal, which is really their only edge, in my opinion.
But defensively, they're so weak and so slow. The Habs can move Galchenyuk up, a guy with speed, with great stick handling, who can really generate an offense.
You'd end up seeing these close games, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because Lundqvist will stand on his head, but the Rangers will probably get a little more quality scoring chances just from their speed. They're going to get a little more open ice from that. Price can still be good, right? But if he gives up 1 because of a good scoring chance, suddenly Lundqvist doesn't have to play as good, right? Or he has a goal to leash to go on. And if he's going to have shutouts, even if things work well tonight, like it did tonight, I don't know. But I'm with Chris. I think the Habs take this in 7. I think it's a pretty back and forth series. I don't see a lot of blowouts. I don't see either goalie letting that happen or either team. For me, the big difference maker, I think, and it's going to start to come along as the series goes on and the bumps and bruises start to take and people start blocking a lot of shots, is going to be Shea Weber on that power play. I think that is what's going to help get the Montreal offense going a little bit better. People forget that he's got a cannon of a shot on the power play, and Montreal needs to use that as a weapon more, I think.
And this is definitely going to be one of the more interesting series to watch.
As Chris said, the better usage of Galchenyuk. Yeah, I didn't realize, but Rick Nash only had 14 minutes this game. That's kind of surprising.
He plays on their 3rd line now or something like that. He really is
really
this year.
They rely on Grabner a lot nowadays.
Yeah, well,
that's a guy that's blossoming.
Yeah, Grabner's like Byron for us, right? I mean, but with Weber, it's not. I think that we don't use it. It's just it's hard to use because we don't have the other weapons, so people just key on him. A guy like Pacioretty, for example, has been great in the regular season, has never been a good playoff performer. And again tonight, he's a little banged up, but he was not good at all. He fumbled 2 pucks that probably should have been in the back of the net, and he is invisible otherwise. So guys like that need to step it up if they want them to win. I think they will, and that's why I have them winning. But the Habs need that game should be a wake-up call for them because they were not good at all.
Fair enough. Moving on to the Ottawa Senators and the Boston Bruins. Boston ended up winning the first game tonight. Ryan, you kick it off this time. What do you see with these two teams?
I am actually going to go Ottawa here. I think Ottawa will probably be one of the Canadian teams to advance here, other than Montreal. Ottawa is a younger team. I think they got a really good coach in Guy Boucher. He's a fantastically underrated coach. I had no idea why the Lightning got rid of him when they did. I know Chris felt the same. We were both sitting there like he's one of the better coaches in the league, and he then ended up getting another gig here in Ottawa. I think for me, the issue in goal and on defense is my big concern with Boston. If this was 3 years ago, Boston would win the series in 5. But once you start looking at how HCHAR is, how slow their defense isn't really fast. They're not really a fast team in general. They're kind of more of a, as they've been, a gritty team. We're going to hit you. But, as the league's got a lot faster, and Ottawa is an example of that in some cases. I just don't. I think it's all going to be suspect, and I think that New York is well built enough in general and adaptable enough. Ottawa is well built enough and adaptable enough in general. They can play a little bit more offensive minded. Erik Karlsson, everyone knows his name, and I think they're surprisingly good defensively. And I give most of that to systems. The moment you get a coach in there who knows what he's doing, like remember, this is the coach that ran 2-2-1 with the Lightning in the playoffs and did magical things with it. So I think that Ottawa wins this in 7. I think it's going to be a close series. I think Marchand is the biggest reason this series is going to be so close. He's really stood out for the Bruins as not just a pest, but a elite level player. Like Brad Marchand, almost 40 goals this season.
Have to be careful not to. He scored the winner tonight, I think is what Chris said.
Yeah.
He will have to be careful not to spear anyone else in the nuts, though, or he may see himself exiting the playoffs before his team.
He is a dirty player. There's no denying that.
Yeah, I was not a fan of his when he played in Moncton.
Hell of a player, though. Man.
Hell of a player.
Nobody can disagree, but I don't have to like him as a person.
He's the reverse Crosby. Crosby just whines. Marchand just does dirty tracks. They're both good, though.
Yeah, he's very much a heel.
Obviously better than Brad Marchand, by the way. I'm not that crazy, people.
Okay, I hope so. But Marchand does have the better nose. So Ottawa in 7, Ryan. What do you think, Chris?
Okay, the Bruins scored more goals in the season. They allowed less. They had the better power play, the better penalty kill by about a country mile. They're a better face-off team by quite a bit. What are the Sens actually better than?
Coaching, in my opinion.
Maybe, but the Bruins have been red hot since switching coaches. So maybe coaching, but honestly, even defensively, with the way Charlie McAvoy played tonight, I do not know if the Sens are actually better defensively, because really, I think they're completely overrated on the back end. Karlsson, yeah, okay. I can't say anything bad about him. He took a lot of steps this year defensively. With that being said, Mark Mathot is absolute trash at times and great at other times, and depending on how he's playing, that could be a big thing. Cody Ceci, okay. I don't think Phaneuf's that great.
I mean, Ceci's solid defensively. That's his thing.
Yeah, Ceci's not bad.
Obviously, they had a big injury just as the playoffs were winding, or as we were about to get into the playoffs. Crosby slashed the hand of Mathot, was it? Yes.
Yeah.
He's out, and I think that takes
a hit how long is he out? I can't remember.
Months. Like he's done.
Oh, he's done. Okay.
I think they got to build his finger. They got to basically repair. Like Crosby slash literally destroyed the top of his finger.
Apparently, they said he could play in Game 1.
Really?
So, yeah.
That's desperate. That's really desperate to bring a guy in who could potentially have, if he gets hit again hard, a career-ending injury.
He's out indefinitely when he was injured. So maybe that's changed. I don't know.
I'm actually seeing if he'd play, because that'd be kind of fun.
The defense isn't that good either.
It's not great, but
let's remember we're talking about Chris Miller. I mean, he's in the defensive group. C. Miller's right there. So you're there. You're moonlighting. And we also have John Michael Lyles. Let's not get over ourselves here, who played 16 minutes. I don't think any team in the playoffs is good with John Michael Lyles playing 16 minutes.
I'm not saying they're great defensively, but I think they've had some guys step up. Mathot did not play, but apparently he was he could have played.
Miller on their team too. Kevin, I know that one.
Yeah, so Colin Miller, actually, the C. Miller, he got hurt
in this game, yeah.
And McAvoy, who was playing his first ever NHL playoff game, was an absolute stud for them. So yeah. He is for those who don't know who Charlie McAvoy is, he's one of the best prospects in the entire league. Both him and Carlo too on that team. I think Carlo's out, but he's a pretty damn good player in his own right. They got some good young D coming up in Boston, but for now they are definitely a defensively focused group who need to play within themselves. and not jump up too much. With that being said, regarding this series, I think Ottawa is potentially the better team on paper. They had a lot of injuries this year, and guys are starting to get healthy now, it seems, other than the Mathot thing. But with that being said, I really just don't think they're going to get it done. Bobby Ryan, I know he scored tonight. He actually had a pretty good game, even though he only played 12 minutes. But he's just not the kind of guy you want to really rely on in the playoffs, in my opinion.
How many games do you think, Chris?
Just give me a sec. So,
okay.
Mark Stone, really good player. Obviously, guys like Kyle Turris will make a difference. But at the end of the day, I think goaltending, I think Tuukka Rask looked great tonight. I think he's going to continue to look great. And I do think the Sens are just too iffy with the puck. They turn it over a lot. They turned over 14 times tonight. And I think Boston will get it done. I'm leaning to 5 games. I think it's going to be quick.
Wow.
Interesting.
Wow.
Ryan says Ottawa 7. Chris says Boston 5. So we do have another split desk, and you guys aren't even in agreement on how easy or hard the series is going to be.
Yeah, I don't know.
I just to me that there's something missing from this Boston group that was they still got Bergeron, they got David Backes, they got Brad Marchand. There's Chara's still competent, but they're just not the same team to me as the Boston team that won. And Tuukka Rask has had a history of struggling. So
I think a guy like Marchand and guys like Backes and even a guy like Dominic Moore and Drew Stafford could make a big difference in the series. They have some pretty solid guys after that first line.
It's fair. All right, so we're going to move on to the next series, which actually there's an error on the NHL.com page. It says the Washington Capitals, this can't be right though. They're playing against the Toronto Maple Leafs. What's here? I'm just going to refresh this real quick. And
I know the Capitals kind of suck. I know
that error has not gone away. Could it be that the Toronto Maple Leafs are actually in the playoffs?
BBC, I'm wearing the shirt, the jersey.
Yes, you are. Ryan, obviously a Caps fan.
I'm repping my colors. Chris is a Habs fan. For those who didn't know, I'm a Caps fan.
I mentioned that at the time.
Oh, did you? At the time?
I did when we were covering his series.
If the series isn't over in 5 games at the latest, I think 4 games should be more respectable. I will be an unhappy individual.
Will you be willing to put your money where your mouth is?
Scores a goal or wins 1 game. I am going to. No, I'm nervous all the time. Anyone who knows anything about the Washington Capitals knows that it doesn't matter if the entire NHL world says they're winning the Stanley Cup, which has happened last year, this year. I'm pretty sure the most trusted analysts of all time are like, how can you bet against the Capitals? Look at their roster. And then the playoffs happen. And then
they did seem to be the overwhelming favorite in the Victory Hockey League's NHL playoff predictions. Washington Capitals for the Cup.
Their goals for and against.
No, I didn't say I looked at those. I said this is what other people said.
These are there are too many stats that favor them. Even though everyone knows that that's not the case, you can't like that. Nobody ignores all the stats completely. I'm trying to find the actual number here, but
I just copy pasted yours because I don't pay nearly enough attention, and I believe you said Capitals, but
I'm trying to look at this.
Say otherwise. Well, while you're looking that up, Ryan, are you willing to put your money where your mouth is? For every game that the Maple Leafs lose, I'm going to want you to spend an hour in a mall. Or that the Maple Leafs win, I'm sorry. No, you're not that confident in your team?
No. I'm never confident in the Capitals in the playoffs. But, okay, I was just going to bring it up as an example. The Capitals were plus 81 in goals for and against differential, Cal.
It's a lot of goals.
Plus 81. That means 263 goals, 182 goals against. They give up the least goals in the NHL. On top of the fact that everyone on the offensive core had 10 goals or more. They are a fantastic team. That doesn't mean anything. That never means anything.
Of course it doesn't.
As Don Cherry was saying, I believe in a most recent cast, his own cast.
Coach's Corner. I've heard of it.
No, as a Rogers podcast with a bunch of younger guys. When you're that number 1 seeded team, in a situation like this, all the pressure's on you. And the problem with the Capitals is it's not just that they're number 1 seed this year; it's that all those playoff losses and everything is built. That the pressure is always on them. They can be the most dominating regular season team in the history of the game. Not even just in stats. You can watch them play against quality teams, and literally make it look like it's Harlem Globetrotters. Like the other team won't touch the puck for 10 minutes. And you're like, how does this team not do great? And then they just don't play like that in the playoffs. There's this edge of confidence. I think they're just too nervous. I don't know what it is. They
All right,
just
so
they can't find it. And
how many games do you think, Ryan?
I can't predict that.
You have to. Come on, man.
In my hockey mind tells me what everyone else's hockey mind tells them. This series is over in 4 or 5 with the Washington Capitals winning. But my history and my heart attackness tells me that this game is over in 7, and the Maple Leafs are going to pull off the most stunning upset of all time. I'll have to hide in shame.
Are you going to listen to your head or to your heart? I want a definitive answer out of you.
I'm always going to listen to my head. I'm the type of person that listens to my head. Washington Capitals at
5 games. Chris?
Toronto in 4.
Toronto in 4.
That'll never happen.
No.
That'll never happen. Ryan Power. We're going to play this clip at the start of next week when they've lost in 4.
They did get swept by the Maple Leafs after in the second round one year. Or sorry, the Maple Leafs, the Lightning.
Yeah, they don't make the playoffs.
I think the Caps need to just kind of do what they do. I mean, really, honestly, there's a significant difference in these teams. The Caps are a loaded, stacked team in every position. The Leafs are a young team on the rise, but they're not there yet. With that being said, I do think Toronto's getting at least one game for sure. I think the Caps need to be careful to stay out of the box. As much as the Caps have a really good penalty kill, Toronto actually had a better power play than the Caps this year. And we're just behind first in the league in that category. And guys like Matthews and Nylander and Marner can be dangerous. You can throw Kadri in there too. And even Bozak and Van Riemsdyk. Like, there's some dangerous offensive weapons on the Leafs. Their downfalls, their defense. It's absolutely atrocious. Zaitsev's hurt, so he's not even playing game 1, might not even play in game 2. So you have Morgan Riley, who's decent. Jake Gardner's not that good. He's had a decent year offensively, but is he ever?
Yeah,
he is a bit of a train wreck defensively. He's got some concerns for me, at least. I know advanced stats wise, he's not terrible, but when the puck's on his stick, it's either going to a stick of his own teammates or on somebody else's, because he turns over the puck about just as much as he probably makes a good pass. Anderson in net, he's a solid goalie. He had a great playoff last year for the Ducks in 5 games. I think he actually led the playoffs in save percentage. I think it was .947. So if he plays like that, they have a chance to maybe sneak a couple games out of this. But I do think the Caps will win in 5. I think Toronto will get the first win in game 3 at home. I think they'll get rallied in that game by the crowd and all that. And I do
definitely can't underestimate the crowd that's been waiting for all this time to watch playoff hockey.
I do think they'll make it close in game 4. But I do think the Caps will win that, maybe an OT game. And then game 5, I think the Caps will just blow them out. So it'll be a good learning experience for Toronto. This is not their time yet. It'll come. This is just good experience.
I mean, yeah, you can't even I don't need to run down. Chris was running down some of the top players. I think the Leafs, you could run down some of the top players of the Caps, but you pretty much would have to run down the roster. I don't think any hockey fan or analyst is confused about saying that on paper, from a depth and every asset, goaltending, coaching, everything, the Caps have what's needed and what's needed to beat the Leafs for sure. I mean, it's just a matter of the Caps, as Chris said, they have to do what they do. I very much consider the Caps to be one of those teams where if they can do what they actually do in the playoffs, then they can easily win a Stanley Cup. They're just that good, but they need to be that good in the playoffs. That's
true.
Not just in the regular season.
And
there's been glimpses of that too. Chris has obviously seen some of them, and I'm assuming you as well, Kyle, in the playoffs against certain teams. You can see them in games do exactly what they do, and the game's not even close in some cases because the other team doesn't. I legitimately am curious if there's a game the Caps play the Leafs in this in this playoffs, where the Leafs get more than 10 shots. That could happen. That's how good the Caps are defensively, combined with how good they are offensively. It's just they have to do that every night, 60 minutes or more every night. If they did that, they would win lots.
That's fair. All right, so
level.
Both in agreement that it's going to be Washington at 5. I think it's probably one of the less controversial predictions. I don't think anyone's going to really disagree with you.
Some fans are saying plan the parade already. So.
Oh, sure, but those people are crazy. I've got one fan who works with me who's bummed that he's playing the Capitals, but he's psyched that they're in the playoffs, and he's like,
that's most of my friends who are Leaf fans. They're just happy to be there, and they're not really worried about the
series. Similar to an Edmonton situation where it's just like, let's get some playoff experience.
This series, I want everyone to be on Ovechkin watch, because a lot of people are talking about how Ovechkin didn't score as much as he normally did this year. He was under 40 even. This is one of his lower scoring totals. I believe he finished with 34, maybe 35. Crosby led the league. Nobody hit 50. So it's down in general. But there was a feeling that I was thinking that, well, he's been pretty healthy and he played the whole year without much serious injury. I wonder if he's literally saving a big burst for the playoffs. Like, we could see an unload of Ovechkin in the playoffs, especially now with so many other assets on that team doing well this season that that coaches and defenses are going to be thinking about. Like, a lot of players are going to be thinking about Kuznetsov, Backstrom, Oshie. I mean, even Shattenkirk now on the back end, right? There's a lot of weapons right now, and I think that we could see a Ovechkin explosion here.
I think TJ Oshie could play such a huge role for that team. I think he gets overlooked by a lot of people. Obviously, Backstrom and Ovechkin are better players, but Oshie, I almost think, slips under the radar so much, and wouldn't be the first time he is pretty clutch. Let's put it that way. I think he's going to have a good series for them.
He's been the perfect fit on that top line, in my opinion, the best top line in the league of three players.
We'll definitely be on OV watch for this series and this playoffs, assuming that the Capitals are lucky enough to make it out against the fearsome Toronto Maple Leafs.
Matt Niskanen, most underrated defenseman in the NHL. I rest my case.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to the final series of Pittsburgh Penguins versus the Columbus Blue Jackets. This will be the team that goes up against the Capitals, assuming they make it out. So I'll give it to Ryan this time because he has a vested interest in how this series turns out. Pittsburgh is leading 1-0 after one.
Shit, right now. I don't like it. I don't like where it's going. I don't want to see Pittsburgh win. Actually, I do. I'd rather Pittsburgh win because I want the juicy redemption of hopefully playing them and beating them. But I was hoping this series would be a little more close. I want overtimes. Tire these motherfuckers out. Like, for the people who don't know, Pittsburgh is missing a very crucial piece of their team, and that's Chris Letang. He's very pivotal in their playoff run, and he's injured, and he's not going to be back for the playoffs at all. I believe he's getting surgery. So,
have I heard something about Fleury being out as well, or was that just
Fleury started the game for them? Actually, a surprisingly good game.
It's believed Murray might be out for the entire playoffs.
And I mean, if it's Fleury versus Holtby, I 100% lean Holtby. Like, that's the thing that people forget about with the Caps, right?
Braden Holtby.
Yeah, we have a great goalie.
Yes. Well, we can continue to suck on the Caps dick in a later edition, Ryan. But we moved on.
They need it now, right? Before they get eliminated. I honestly think that this series is going to go 7 games. I think that Bobrovsky, Tortorella's always been a good player.
Sorry, I believe that you said that name wrong.
What?
Sergey. Okay, thank you. You're right. I'm going to do that. This thing. You're talking about Sergey Bobrovsky.
They're going back to TSN, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, Jane and Dan are coming back.
That, yeah. Anyway, Bobrovsky's a clutch goalie. I think he's going to, win steal games for Columbus in this series. And Tortorella's always had his teams always go 7 usually or deep in playoffs. It's just the style he plays. He plays a brand of hockey that's very playoff. And I think that the Columbus team, as evidenced this year, really responded to Tortorella's coaching. Last season the Columbus Blue Jackets were not a playoff team; they were pretty bad. And this season they just responded, and that whole team is ready to go. They got a good performer there on the back end, and Seth Jones on top of Bobrovsky. They got some underrated offensive pieces. Talking about Boone Jenner, like a fantastic center in my opinion, a very underrated younger player. He plays a good two-way game too, and he hits. Like, he's a good player. And I just think with Fleury likely in net, Letang also on the injury. As much as I want to play Pittsburgh, I have a feeling that Columbus actually might edge this out in 7.
Columbus in 7, is that your prediction?
Yeah, that's what I'm going with.
All right, Chris.
Okay. Yeah. So just regarding Murray, it sounds there's a lot of speculation that he might have tore something in his knee.
Okay.
Their coach, all it's been said, their coach said, we'll have more information tomorrow. We know both our goalies and our one goalies. That's not really it's kind of an ominous thing to say. And just listening to a couple of the analysts who were former goalies, they said that's what it looked like to them. It didn't look good at all. So a lot of people think he's at least out the round. potentially the whole playoffs. That's a big loss. I mean, on top of Letang, Columbus, though, has really been sliding.
Yeah, that's true.
And they had a great first period this evening, but then they just collapsed as soon as Pittsburgh scored.
That happens to a lot of people when they play Pittsburgh in the playoffs, to be fair, though.
Yeah. And honestly, once again, Phil Kessel, that guy in the playoffs, I still think he should have won the Conn Smythe last year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We talked about that privately, but yeah.
Yeah, he should have. He got robbed last year. But once again, great game for him in the playoffs. He is just a playoff machine for them. And I don't know. Pittsburgh's got some good pieces. I think Fleury can be decent enough that they're going to make it a good series. And I don't think Columbus's offense is exactly trending well right now. If you look at their team of late, they don't look like the same team that dominated early in the year. Werenski, Jones are solid defensemen for Columbus. David Savard's one of the best defensive defensemen in the league and super underrated, way overlooked player. Up front, though, I mean, Atkinson, Vemberg, Saad.
Saad is a good player. He's underrated.
Yeah, Saad is. Foligno. Gagne had a really good year, sure. But at the end of the day, I admittedly, after watching tonight's game, I'm changing my prediction. What I originally had Columbus in 7. I'm now going Pittsburgh in 7. Regardless of the injuries, that team just gets it done. Kind of like Chicago, I have a hard time betting against them.
Yeah.
And regardless of who's out, it just seems like somebody else picks it up. And I think Fleury's a decent enough goalie that he could be solid. And I think he's going to want to prove something with this whole expansion talk. I think he's going to want to prove something. I think they can cover up well enough for Letang, at least offensively. And yeah, I think the way Columbus has been trending and the way I saw them collapse tonight, I think Pittsburgh wins in 7.
All right.
Fair statement.
We'll so that
one resolves.
And Phil Kessel will be the reason. He's going to be the consummate winner of the first round.
Crosby wasn't great in last year's playoffs either. He got overrated, and then
he had a good series, I thought.
Yeah, but not a good playoffs.
No, but I thought he had a good finals.
Phil Kessel. Let's be real. The whole reason Pittsburgh won the cup was that third line. Kessel and Hagelin, like everyone knows it. The fact that it didn't go to one of those three is embarrassment. The only other player I could have considered it going to, other than someone off that line, is Murray. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't understand how it was Crosby.
I thought Murray
got the big name.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. All right, so that covers NHL talk. There is one other topic I think that we do want to get into, and that has to do with the NHL deciding that they're not going to pause their season for the Olympics next year. And a lot of I think it is ultimately being left up to the owners, but they don't, for the most part, the league doesn't want to send their players. Ryan, I know you know a little bit more about this topic than I do, so I'll let you kind of do a bit of an overview on it.
So I don't know for sure if the league, I read something the other day that states that the league might actually institute rules about this, but from what I understand, anything that's a suspension of a breach of contract is left up to the owners. For example, Ted Leonsis of the Capitals has said that he will 100% let Ovechkin go, because there's obviously a lot of media around the fact that Ovechkin said, I don't care what the NHL says, I'm playing for my country. And I think there's going to be other players, not just foreigners. I think a lot of people assume it's just going to be, Ovechkin and Malkin and the Russians, maybe a couple of, maybe Voracek, maybe Kopitar, like maybe a couple of those guys. It really means something to them. But it could be Canadians. It could be Americans. It just depends on, if a player has a big enough star power position on their team, and their team, remember, at the time that the Olympics happen during the regular season, is at the least busiest time of the NHL season. It's always during the period where a bunch of teams are exchanging different breaks now that they have a mandatory off week. So from Christmas on, a bunch of teams take about 7 days straight off. The Caps had theirs in I believe early February or maybe mid-February. And around that window is when the Olympics happen. And the NHL also runs its All-Star game. So there's an extra period of time off during that period as well. So the amount of actual games, if a player was to leave and not get injured, that they would miss for training camp and et cetera, probably isn't more than 10 or 15. Like, it's not a large number. So if a player's on a really competing team with a really good roster other than them, GMs might be more, and teams might be more like willing to say, okay, we're not going to suspend you. You can go ahead and go over. We'll call up and check out an AHL guy for 15 games. But then you consider teams like the Oilers, teams they might not want to send a McDavid because having McDavid every game can be the difference between them making or missing the playoffs, right? So it's going to be tough to see. I think it's going to be a team by team basis. I think we're going to see at least 20 or 30 NHL players go to the Olympics. I don't know if we'll see many more than that. I don't think the rosters like Canada will be as overloaded. I think you're going to see a lot more players that are a little less known. I'm not going to say beer league, but certainly maybe AHL guys or players that might be free agents or American or Canadian players playing in the KHL, like things like that will obviously be the case. But I couldn't see more than even 20. I think is probably a healthy number of NHLers that I think will go. The real question is this: does this have any impact on a potential lockout? And I think a lot of people think that this could easily make the Players Association say, "Well, you basically changed the rules on us." I think it's a big bummer, and I think I don't know. The NHL said they pulled the fans across the board, and they said, "Oh, we definitely support not going to the Olympics." And it's like, what?
Yeah, that was bullshit.
Who did you
Well, I'm sure that they did a poll, but it's very easy to get literally whatever data that you want with the poll. It's like it's like those WWE polls that are like, oh, do you guys want to have a whatever the fuck match or the super crazy tag team match? Oh, 97% of people said the cool one with the cool name. Sure.
I just think it's just bad for the game. Really,
I agree completely.
The international stage is very important, and hockey's one of the only professional sports. Basketball does an okay job of it, but hockey's big thing is that it is well represented in international hockey with the best players in the world consistently playing in Olympics, World Cups, World Juniors. Like, it's a big deal. The Olympic or the international variations of hockey is a way bigger deal, I find, than other sports. Like football doesn't even have it. I don't think so.
No, their Super Bowls are a big thing.
Yeah.
I think that it's actually it's even short-sighted for teams. Like, I think that you could, like, the obvious argument is that if a player gets injured, but we've talked about it before, a player could get injured by walking across the street to practice and getting hit by the bus, and then they wouldn't have gotten injured if they'd gone to the Olympics. So yeah, there's obviously a higher probability there. But I think that even in a team like, and we'll use Edmonton as the example because you can understand the logic of we don't make the playoffs without McDavid, so we don't want to send him. I still think that's short-sighted. I think it's worth the experience McDavid gets at something like the Olympics to miss the playoffs for 1 year because he's a better player when he comes back.
I also think it's insulting to players like McDavid. Remember, these kids join the NHL with the dream of being like their heroes, like Gretzky, like Lemieux, like etc. The list goes on. And essentially saying, okay, we're going to market that and you finally made it. Way to go. You're the star. Now we're not going to let you achieve Olympic gold medals or attempt to with your country like we let all those players do. And those players, like for a lot of players even in the NHL Hall of Fame, the international aspect of their play gets factored into why they get selected into Hockey Hall of Fames. And for players like McDavid especially, but certain other players as well, going to the Olympics is pivotal to the overall, I think, impact of their career. And
I would agree. And it's just
a shame.
It's even a shame for the players who do get to go, right? Like, let's say Russia wins this year and Ovechkin gets to go, and he only plays against like a half-powered up Canada. There's always going to be an asterisk in everyone's mind,
tainted, right? And it sucks. Yeah, they do that. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, like because I mean, people are gonna, like, and it's not even his fault. Like, him as a player really only has the impact to decide, do I go or do I stay? And I think the right move for him to do is to say, like, fuck you, I'm going. I'm Alex Ovechkin. I can do whatever I want. But yeah, like you might even be able to see someone like Crosby do the same thing. But McDavid's probably too young, and it's not like he can be even pressuring them by being like, hey, I could just go sign somewhere else soon. Like, he's in his rookie season. Yeah. He has an entry-level contract. He can't be like, hey, like,
the real interesting thing will be free agents and RFAs. If there's any notable names in that pool that say, one of them could really want to play for their country, so they could sign a 1-year deal overseas to allow them to play in the Olympics and then come back.
You could see that as well. Chris, what do you think about this whole thing?
It's pretty disappointing. I mean, I don't know where they got their whole information, but anyone I've talked to is pretty upset about it. I mean, I love the NHL, but I also think the Olympics is some of the best hockey you can watch. And I think it's
different
nice to have
too.
It is. It's nice to have a little break in between. Regarding who I think will go, or if I think a lot will go, I think you're definitely going to see a lot of Europeans. That's obvious. Voracek, Ovechkin, Kuznetsov's already apparently said he might go as well.
Yeah, Backstrom even could. I could see that.
I mean, the Caps could really be hit hard by it.
It doesn't matter because Holtz will stay.
TJ Oshie has had a lot of success at the international level, so I could see him going. There's a lot of guys. I mean, at the end of the day, I could see a guy like Crosby going. He didn't flat out say he'd stay. They asked me, he said, I haven't really thought about it yet, but
whatever he tells Lemieux, that's what's happening. They're not going to rock the boat.
No,
and that's
definitely don't rock the boat.
And that's kind of what I think is going to happen with McDavid, because I think McDavid might want to go. And you're not going to want
Crosby and McDavid. People want to see that together.
Yeah, when are you ever going to see that again? Like, there's not a universe in which Pittsburgh doesn't pay Crosby enough to play out the rest of his career, and Edmonton would be a fool to let McDavid go.
You're not going to want to piss off McDavid at this point. So I think there will definitely be some guys that are North American certainly going. Crosby, McDavid, that would be a big statement, I think. And I think guys like that could see it that way. Look, it's just kind of like a big fuck you to the NHL by going and being like, this is not acceptable. You need to treat us with a little more fairness in this situation. I don't really see why they're not sending them. I think it's stupid.
Well,
it's great.
That being said,
this is only a rumor, by the way, guys, but I've heard rumblings about the fact that this is actually intended to cause a lockout before the start of next season, and it could even cause a lockout for this before the start of next season, because the NHL the NHL and the owners want certain provisions that were agreed to in the initial contract that were that basically the PA could determine to extend the deal to an extra 3 years or an extra however, you know what I mean, because of the current deal, and I guess that that in exchange for giving them the Olympics, or not, or obviously if they were to let them have it, that the NHL would then want those 3 years mandatory, so that extra contract on term, because obviously they've set the percentages as such in terms of finances. It's all just, to me,
that's a really scumbag. If that's actually why they're doing it, that's a really scumbag to do business.
Obviously, none of us are actually in these boardrooms. I don't actually
think
that are ridiculously ripping people off or being scumbags here. Obviously, owners have entitlements and rights to their money, but I mean, they do get a lot of breaks. Like, they do build arenas on taxpayer dollars. Like, let's not forget that these guys are billionaires sometimes doing this. And as far as I'm concerned, I can leave all that in their hands as long as they don't screw anything like this up. If they did whatever they do, bickered between each other, but the NHL was still in the Olympics, nobody would be talking about this. The reality is they need to figure this stuff out, and they need to figure it out so that there's no inconveniences for us, the fans, because it's easy for them to forget that without the fans, they don't have money, so they don't exist. So.
Yeah, we'll see. It's gonna be interesting because I think regarding who else could play, maybe some free agents do if they're not getting a lot of love. But I think you're going to see a lot of the guys who normally play for the Spangler Cup team. Maybe get some love. Guys like Nick Spalling, Mason Raymond. So guys who used to play in the NHL who are almost auditioning to try to get back there. And I think that's the type of guys you'll see.
It's a good story, at least, if someone does real well and then manages to turn that into another shot at the NHL, and they throw like a 20-goal season or something out, and you go, that's a good story for the game.
It's possible, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. There's a lot of guys who kind of bloomed a little late, right, and have had great careers overseas. But with that being said, I think there's going to be a lot of NHLers going. I do. I think even Canada's going to have a pretty full team of NHLers, because I think there's going to be at least a lot of depth guys who would be happy to take the call.
You could also see this
impact. Awards will, anyone like that they're like, well, maybe a team will give us him because he's less pivotal, right? Like,
and the team would probably
have a feeling
with a guy like that going.
Yeah.
You could even see this affect contracts a little bit as well, like people who are coming up free agency, where they could write it into their contract, like, I'm not signing with you unless you let me play in the Olympics if I get called on.
I don't think that would be written in contract. I think
but you know what I mean, like that
before
contract, literally written into the contract, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be
a weird provision, but I think unless the NHL does come out with some rule set, that might happen. They might say any team that sends players to the NHL or to the Olympics is fine, but then maybe teams take the fine, right? Like, but
the rumor is that you're not going to be able to play in the playoffs.
That is the worst.
The players individually?
Of my life.
Yeah.
How do you even enforce that?
Although if your team sucks, then like Duchesne could just be like, fuck Colorado and just head off.
Decision before the trade deadline.
Yeah.
That's pretty early to start saying your team's not going to be.
If the
NHL does that, that's going to be horrible. No one is going to watch the period.
I don't think that they could. That would be literal.
They absolutely can.
There would be people.
That's
No, I mean
the
like probably they can make a rule about it, but I don't think that they can as a business move. Like people would be camping outside of Bettman's door.
Yeah,
looking
all
for
that would
a
happen
ladder.
is if that's the rule, then we're going to see a lot of Donald Fair on our TVs because the players aren't going to agree to play this season, and there's going to be another lockout. It's as simple as that.
I think there'll be a lot that'll go down before the players just say, "Yeah, okay, whatever, we won't go." I think there's going to be a lot of stuff going down. I think we're going to have a lot more to talk about in future weeks about this stuff. So we could probably leave it at that. And then if anything else comes up, we'll talk about it, obviously.
Yeah, this could definitely be a returning segment to Championship Challengers.
And we'll have more sports to talk about in later editions, obviously, everyone. We normally would have covered some UFC 210 just happened, but we're kind of over our time limit here. So
yes, UFC, Masters, baseball, there's tons of stuff, but...
Yeah, well, this is also the start of the NHL playoffs, and that's
Masters went to playoff round, did it? I heard.
Sorry?
The Masters went to like a playoff format or like a...
Did, and Sergio got his first ever Masters after...
How often does that happen, by the way? Do they go
it actually happens
when people are tied at the end of the tournament, right?
It happens a fair amount, actually, surprisingly. But yeah, Sergio, he was his 14th time in a top 5 position. It's his first Masters win. So it was nice to see him win it, actually.
Oh, no, I might have watched a recent one where what's his name won? Bubba Watson?
I like Bubba, yeah.
Yeah, I watched some of that. That was Andrew's golfer when we played the video game.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's wrap this up, Kyle.
Fair enough. Yeah. So that was a pretty successful edition, gentlemen. I think we got some good analysis. We got the occasional troll in there. Thank you very much for joining me. This has been my friend Christopher Miller.
Yep. Make sure to like, subscribe.
Oh, don't no.
Yeah, we're gonna do it. Like and subscribe.
We're not.
And,
I'll mute you, you motherfucker.
And
Caps, please, I beg of you, win.
Well, I actually don't know how to unmute him. Now I feel kind of bad. I'm sorry, Chris. I didn't realize this was. Oh wait, is it this button? Nope. I'm just.
I mean, I can unmute myself. So.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
And
it's kind of a useless tool on your part.
That's a really dumb tool.
So like and subscribe.
And